Following presentation is focused on infamous underworld figure Leslie Squizzy Taylor, and in particular how his murder by rival gangster John Cutmore on the 27th of October 1927 was portrayed by the media of the time. Both men died in a gunfight. As you can see on the screen there's a mugshot of Squizzy. Joseph Leslie Theodore Taylor was born in Brighton, Victoria in 1888, but quickly received the nickname of Squizzy due to a droopy left eyelid. Taylor began a life of crime at a young age, beginning with more petty crimes such as pickpocketing, and although never proven guilty of any serious crimes, he was often linked to more extreme crimes such as bank and jewellery thefts, along with murder. So on the right hand side there you'll just see a snippet of one of the many articles that just sort of peppered the news at the time and the media of Squizzy and sort of added to his level of fame as an underworld figure. Although the focus of this presentation is on his murder, it is important to mention that in the many years prior to his death, Taylor was constantly spoken about in the media throughout the country, especially in 1916 when he was suspected of murdering 21-year-old chauffeur William Haynes. So as you can see there from images 1 through to 3 of the articles written at the time, the media really went from having no suspect to having Squizzy as a suspect, and then he was found not guilty. And one thing I found really interesting leading up to it was the way they built him up as a character, but also the level of detail in the court cases that they described was quite entertaining to read. The media turned him into a source of entertainment and mystery, and by the time of his death, most people knew him as one of the most famous and dangerous underworld figures at the time. So now we'll look at his murder. When Squizzy Taylor was murdered by Cutmore due to a Fitzroy underworld vendetta, the media was flooded with not only the story about how he was murdered, but also about his life of criminality. One interesting observation about the media at the time is that although they didn't condone Taylor's life of crime, they were happy to use it to draw the public's attention. The narrative of Taylor's life, and in particular death, was created by the media, and was that of which author and criminologist Ray Surrett refers to as a professional criminal. The media often referred to him as a well-dressed and violent ladies' man. This helped articles written about Taylor's death, as they were focused more on entertaining the public than they were on informing them. So as you can see those headings there, hectic life, sensationally ended, Melbourne's latest thrill. It's almost like it's a sequel to a movie, and that was their aim at the time. It seemed like they were just trying to entertain. These articles contain an exhaustive amount of detail about his murder and the events that followed. So there's an example of on the screen there. I'm not going to read the entire article out, but a few sentences that I found quite interesting was the floor was littered with empty cartridge cases, 14 being picked up on the floor. All 4 walls bore bullet marks, and Cutmore, who had been shot through the heart, had a second bullet wound on the little finger of his right hand. You can just see the sheer amount of detail. This was implemented by the media at the time to entertain and make those reading the articles feel as if they were there. In doing so, the media most likely managed to create a symbolic reality for many Australians with respect to organised crime. Ordinary people reading the articles would feel like they had personally witnessed Squizzy's murder, and this may well have distorted their view on crime, and in particular organised crime in Australia. The extensive amount of detail with respect to the facts of the case also gives the impression that although the police were not directly quoted in most newspaper articles surrounding the murder, they most likely had a strong relationship with journalists at the time and a large amount of control as to what was given to and reported by newspapers, something which is quite uncommon in today's age of new media where videos are posted on Facebook and other platforms of social media, and the police sometimes have little time to react and respond to it and control it at certain stages. So who was the victim in this crime? Although Taylor was technically a victim, the media at the time did not portray him as one. The only minor victim mentioned with respect to his crime was John Cutmore's mother, who was cooking when he came in with a pistol for the pistol fight. Although Taylor has been described as a victim in some articles, such as the one on the screen, as you can see there, Squizzy Taylor, a victim, the subheading sequel to Private Feud seems to be the more fitting heading there. The media expressed no sympathy for either man who died. Neither Taylor nor Cutmore were the ideal victim. They were not a young child or pregnant woman. They were both violent men caught up in organised crime. Therefore, newspaper articles fixed their focus on the life of Taylor and on the vendetta and the feud between the two underworld figures, as this is what would help fuel their entertainment and commercial motives. However, although Taylor's life and murder was used as a source of entertainment, newspapers at the time also seemed to enforce a common message and moral lesson to their readers upon his death. As much as they sensationalised his murder and created a sense of mystery around him, the media were quite strong to enforce the idea that he was in reality an ordinary man of ordinary intelligence and nothing more than a dangerous criminal. So I won't read the entire article there, but that's actually just a passage from the previous article. But what I will read is what I found interesting was Taylor was a criminal of ordinary mentality whose distinguishing features were his callous disregard for the lives of others, his treachery towards his associates, and his personal cowardice. So they built him up as this entertainment source, but they also, upon his death, they cut him down in a sense that to create a moral lesson for a lot of people reading these articles. All these articles seem to have a common tone throughout them, that those who choose a life of criminality, such as Squizzy Taylor's, will have a similar fate, even though they may receive short-term notoriety. So, to compare it to a contemporary comparison, Squizzy Taylor was recently used in an Underbelly series where his life was romanticised. So you can see there on the screen, based on the true story of a superstar crime lord. They really built him up and sensationalised him. So even today, although he has always been denounced by the media, they've always sensationalised him at the same time, as this provides entertainment along with commercial opportunity. At the time of Taylor's murder, newspapers were one of the main sources of entertainment, and as a result, they often sensationalised violent crimes in order to maintain public interest. In doing so, they often stretched the facts of the crimes. They reported to make those who weren't there feel as if they were. Although these stories conveyed an underlying of deterrence to their readers, they most likely altered many Australians' symbolic reality with respect to crime. As unlike today, where we have new media coming at us from all different directions, and that gives us the opportunity to be a bit more skeptical on what we read. This was a generation only exposed to legacy media such as the newspapers and radio, and therefore I don't think it can be undermined the impact that these articles would have had on Australians, given that they were one of the very few sources of media that and entertainment that was received by the general public. So here is my bibliography. I started by looking at the Australian Dictionary of Biography and looking at a brief background of Squizzy, and then I looked at articles leading up to his death, but most importantly surrounding his murder and after his murder, and I applied the knowledge that I received from Ray Surrett's textbook to these articles that I read, which I found quite interesting. Thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.